Today, we're talking about the downfall of the public education system, and that comes from a project that one of our students wrote. Her name is Allyson, and she named her project "The Downfall of Education." Of the education system. That was her words. Definitely a very attention-catching title. But she starts out her project actually talking about a story from her time in public school. She was like 10 or 11, I think, and in their school, they needed to read a certain number of books in a year, and then the kids who weren't able to read that many books and didn't read that many books had to sit in a room and read quietly while the other kids had a pizza party. And that was how she started out her project. And she wasn't able to read that many books, and so she told it from the perspective of needing to sit in that room and looking at her book and just not feeling happy at all and feeling like she didn't have the support from her classmates or from her teacher. And that story just really hit home with me. I saw myself in her shoes, and that was also a great way to start out her project, talking about how, well, kids are different, right? They need different support and they need different education solutions for themselves.
Well, and also how that impacts your confidence and your willingness to learn. Because that
Definitely.
can be something that just feels really discouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hit home with me because I saw myself being in that situation. And of course, when you're 10 and 11, that's like the biggest deal in the world, right? But if I had been in that situation, I think I would have lost a great deal, or if not all my motivation to read.
Yeah, just feeling really defeated.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the goal of reading? It's to learn, it's to explore. But you're not going to teach kids to learn and to explore through negative reinforcement. But anyway, with that starting our conversation off, how do we want to go from there?
Yeah, well, I think that it's important to recognize why the system is the way it is, because it's not like we started out being like, let's punish kids for reading and for not reading enough, and that's how we're going to help them. It's like, that's not really how this was probably envisioned.
Yeah.
And initially, it was to fill a need that was really needed back in, the Industrial Revolution time, where we were, thinking about,
yes.
How do we take all these farmers that, they're just out there doing their thing.
Well, before it was like a little village where you've got the farmer and you've got the baker and you've got the...
Right. And the majority of people were still working in agriculture.
Right.
But there was still the specialization of labor where, if you wanted to, get your clothes done by somebody, then you would go to the clothes person, the tailor,
the seamstress.
Yep. But then it was kind of a situation where, in order to grow and drop the cost of these goods, you needed to standardize the way they were made. And generally that was through factories. And you would just have one person do each step in the production process. And that allowed you
one
to...
person do one step,
Right.
another person do another step, all in a line.
Yeah, and that was something that allowed for the cost to dramatically drop,
Right.
and for you to mass produce these goods. And that was very needed in that kind of society where, people wanted security that comes from, a regular paycheck, instead of just being like, hope it rains, and if it doesn't, we're in trouble. But it's kind of a situation where, you needed a workforce with a certain skill set of learning how to follow directions and show up to work on time and listen to your boss. And that was something that people weren't used to, just living out on the farm, doing their own thing.
Yeah, so the Industrial Revolution hit, and all of a sudden we need people to act like robots, and like you said, put the thing on the thing, all in a line, and then you get your paycheck. And so that's when the education, that's where the public education started up. That's when it started up, right?
Yeah, but since then, there's been a dramatic change in how our, goods are produced, because now we have a ton of tools, whether that be, robots and hardware or software and automation, enabling us to do that without people necessarily involved. So a lot
Right.
of these more, just kind of standardized, you know what you need to do, you just got to follow directions. That's something that you can easily train a robot or a software algorithm to do.
So
And
the need for humans to do it is a lot less.
Right. And increasingly so. We have all these new AI tools that can do increasingly
yeah.
complex tasks. But you still have to be the one that prompts that model to say, here's what you're going to do, and here's how you're going to do it. And then it can just consistently and reliably, it doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to sleep, it won't make mistakes. And so you're like, okay, looking at the cost benefit analysis here, like, should we keep paying Fred to do this, or should we have ChatGPT do this? And it's kind of
ChatGPT doesn't need us to pay it.
right, exactly.
Right?
So as businesses continue to lower costs through this process, what do we need humans to do now? And a big part of it is that, these AI models and these robots can't really solve novel creative problems, because that requires adaptability, and being able to kind of see, come up with creative solutions. And that's something that, humans can use these tools to enhance their ability to do that, but it still ultimately needs to come from, the creative problem solving that humans can uniquely do.
Right,
and that's
so-
also something that's way more enjoyable. Would you rather do something over and over again, or, come across new problems that can make things a lot more interesting,
Yeah.
and also a lot more fulfilling.
So let's wind it back a little bit. So
Yeah.
we've got the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
and that's when the public education system was born.
Yeah.
And it was born to fit that need of humans need to act like robots. And
Because we didn't have robots at the time.
Right, exactly. And follow these instructions and be in that assembly line. And so that's what it was made for. But now we're in a new era where we have robots to fill in that don't need to get paid, that don't eat and don't sleep. It's like Fred or ChatGPT, not a very hard decision, right? And so now we've got a need for humans to do something different. We need them to be able to solve novel problems. We need them to use their creativity.
Yeah.
But the education system hasn't changed to fit that need.
So what you see is a reversal of the standardization that came with the Industrial Revolution, because now with the costs dropping so much to be able to, for example, you have new technologies like 3D printing that allow you to make, a new personalized product every single time much easier than you would if you had to like redo the entire factory setup
Right.
to create a slightly different product that just wouldn't
Slightly
make
different
sense
fork
cost-wise.
that has another inch of the little
Right.
little prong thingies.
Yeah, so you have all these different technologies that are enabling that. And so now what you're seeing is more and more personalization. And so that's something that isn't really reflected in our education system, but what we're seeing is that, especially with technology, more and more educators and families are looking to provide and, seek out personalized solutions for their children's
Right.
education.
So how is WEquil App helping with that?
Well, so essentially what WeQuil App is doing is connecting all these personalized options, because we're seeing that, a lot of educators are thinking, okay, well, I can stay in the standardized system, but that isn't necessarily allowing me the creative freedom as a teacher to think about how is my unique teaching style going to serve my students? How can I, leverage that to grow, clients that appreciate who I am. And that's something that now you can do with technology, building a brand around yourself,
Yeah.
and providing those things, whether that be online or locally. But even these technologies, this software is allowing you to enhance what you're doing locally by connecting with a wider range of people that you otherwise probably wouldn't meet. So that's a big part of what we're doing at WeQuil App. But I think part of this is really thinking about like what is the goal of education, and why is personalization actually required for that? Because you could say like, okay, well, maybe the needs are changing, but does that necessarily mean that we have to do something different for every single kid?
Yeah.
Maybe we can just change the existing system to work in a different way. But really what we're seeing now is that, what do we actually need kids to be able to do? And a big part of it is becoming curious, responsible, capable, competent adults who are able to solve these novel problems, to learn new tools. Like, we don't know what's going to be available. Like, I can't even imagine what it was like before ChatGPT, honestly. Like, it just seems like a totally different world, and that's going to keep happening. So if that's the case, what we really need kids to be able to do is to learn quickly and adapt to the changing needs, the changing tools, changing environment that's going to come up in the future.
If you're relying on a one-size-fits-all solution, and you're relying on that to change as quickly as, as the world, that's not going to work. It just can't work, because the new improvements and the new innovation is just coming so fast, and it's getting faster and faster and faster. And it's like, you can't rely on the public education system, which hasn't changed for so long.
Well, it's also because if you have this, if you're a standardized human being, because that's part of what the public education was doing, is standardizing what the skill sets were going to be for each person. So you could know, like, hey, this person has this certification, or they graduated high school, so they have these skill sets, and that's something that was universally needed in all of these factories. You needed to learn how to follow directions, right? But now, if you have all of these, you have an exponential rise in the number of jobs and the number of, there's just so many niche markets that need to be filled, given the overlapping of these different technologies and industries to provide more unique solutions. And so what you want is to be differentiated somehow. Like, if you're a standardized person, then that means you can be replaced at any time. If you quit your job, there's always going to be somebody else to fill your place if you don't have something that makes you different. This is something that Naval talks about is specific knowledge, right? Of what is something that can be learned but not taught, and if it can't be taught, then you can't be replaced. But that's going to come from more unique experiences and actually learning about yourself and, like, who am I? What makes me different? And that requires a system that isn't standardized, that is more personalized, to give people the freedom to actually discover themselves.
Yes, ideally it's going to be as personalized and unique as you can make it, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get those kids to grow that unique aspect of themselves that, ChatGPT can't replace. If you're asking Freddie to create his idea, ChatGPT can't come up with that idea, and ChatGPT cannot replace that idea. And so then the decision is easy. Keep Freddie. Yeah. But if Freddie is just working in an assembly line, putting a piece of a car on this piece of a car, then it's really easy. So if you're going to grow that unique part of those kids, you're going to need a education system that is as unique and personalized as you can make it.